It is 5:31 p.m. and this is the Oversight Board of the City of Emeryville.
Mama, watch this drum.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Which paper can I draw?
Board Member Gooding.
See?
Me? Oh, I'm here.
Board Member Harper.
Here.
Mama,
Board Member Parente.
see?
Vice Chair Brown.
Mama,
Chair Martinez.
I am here. At this time, I'll entertain any public comment for items that would be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Seeing none, we are moving on to special orders of the day. It's item 4.1. Is the administration of the oath of office to newly appointed Emeryville Oversight Board Member Ronald Little, representative of the Peralta Community College District. So would our clerk please have the honor?
Mama, watch this, see?
Oversight Board Member.
Do solemnly
Mama, I need a different drum. I need a different thing.
Constitution of the States.
Constitution of the State of California.
Constitution of the State of California.
Against all
Mama,
enemies,
that one.
foreign and
Foreign
domestic.
and
That
domestic.
one, Mama.
Faith and allegiance. Constitution of the United
To
States.
the Constitution of the United States.
Constitution of the State of
Constitution
California.
of the State of California.
And I take this obligation freely,
And I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully
And that I will and faithfully,
discharge the duties on which I'm about to enter.
on which I'm about to enter.
Please. You hear the sound?
Hey, congratulations and welcome to Board Member Little. You can take your seat up at the dais. Give you a second to do that.
Nice to meet you.
All right, we are moving on to the consent calendar. It's item 5.1, the action minutes of January 26th.
Move approval.
Second.
Second. Although I can't second. I wasn't here.
Okay, so we have a motion
I
by
wasn't either.
Member Gooding and a second by Member Brown.
I can't open.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mama, I can't open this. Mama,
Board Member
I can't
Gooding?
open this.
Yes.
Board Member Harper.
Abstain?
Board Member Little.
Abstain.
Board Member Brown.
Yes.
And Board Member Martinez.
Aye. Okay, and on to our action items. We have item 6.1, resolution of the City of Emeryville Oversight Board approving the change in funding source from reserve balance to other funds in the amount of $970,995 for the recognized obligation payment schedule of the City of Emeryville as successor agency to the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency for the period of July 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015, pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 34177A4.
Good evening, board members. I'm Michael Guina, the city attorney, and for your consideration tonight is a resolution approving a change in the funding source from the reserve balance to the other funds in the amount of $970,000 and $970,995. The reason, this is essentially a cleanup item. When the DOF approved ROPS 1617, they approved the item noting that for the 15-16A period, that amount of $970,995 had been that we had pulled those funds from the reserve balance rather than the other funds, and so they are in order to what they have requested the Oversight Board to do is to correct the source of funding for that amount, and so that's what this resolution proposes to do. And that's the conclusion of my report.
Are there any clarifying questions?
Yeah.
Greg?
What was the mistake? Was the mistake in assigning the reserve funds to that in the first place, as opposed to other funds, or was the mistake in not realizing that you decided the reserve funds and instead spent other funds?
It's the latter. The mistake was that we had not assigned it, that we were pulling from the other funds instead of from the reserve funds.
And was that just a clerical error, or what's the difference in as a taxing entity?
Sure.
What is the difference between, why should I care?
Well, I think the short answer is that you shouldn't. It's just that how we had, in terms of the line item that we had assigned, that we were pulling from, versus the line item that we were supposed to be pulling from, was essentially a clerical mistake. But the funds were always available, and the DOF essentially flagged this error, and they are now asking for that correction.
So what went into the decision to use the reserve funds? What was the successor agency thinking when it said, okay, leave the other funds there and let's use the reserve funds?
Well, typically speaking, the successor agency is charged with spending down its reserve funds. We are given those reserve funds, and we are charged with pulling from the reserve fund balance first and drawing that down as much as possible, which is why we would typically go to the reserve, as our go-to procedure, we would go to the reserve funds.
Yeah, so that's what makes me wonder, because there's two ways that the DOF could have gone. They could have said, all right, go get an authorization to make the switch, or they could have said, take your reserve funds and replenish the other funds, and because that's what you really intended to do, and that's what you should have done all along. So that would be the way an accountant would do it, right? An accountant would say, this is how you correct a clerical error. Is that you say, okay, we pulled it out of pot B, should have come out of pot A. Let's take pot A and replenish pot B, and we're even. And I don't understand why that's not what's happening.
And well, I don't understand why. I couldn't clarify for you why DOF has not pursued that course. They had, in approving the ROPS, they called this out, and they had called for this particular course of corrective action. In terms of why they decided to go this route as opposed to the other one that you had suggested, that was the DOF's decision, and I'm not, I don't have any insight to provide to you as to why they chose this particular course of corrective action.
Because it seems to me as a taxing entity, as you say, the reserve funds are something that I don't think I'm ever going to get, because those funds have already been calculated out as being needed for future ROPS or existing obligations. Now the other funds, now that's something I can get. So that's why I'm kind of, fighting why the DOF would do this when it does have a different flavor to the taxing entities.
Understood. As I say, I am not able to provide any additional information to you beyond the letter that DOF had provided us, which is the information that we had provided you. We have essentially given you all of the information that DOF has given to us. Their direction was very clear as to why they did this, but beyond that, they did not give us any additional information as to why they chose this course of action.
Because now your reserve funds are out of balance, right? Because you've got more in your reserve funds than what you said you needed.
Yes.
I mean, is this so critical that we can't go back to them and say, isn't there a better way to do this?
I suppose that's an option. I don't, I suppose that's always an option. But again, I mean, the reason that we're before you tonight is because the
That's
DOF
what they told
has
you to
asked
do,
for
yeah.
this particular course of action.
But it doesn't hurt us if we delay this for a couple of months, does it? I mean,
No.
things chug along, and because I just from an accounting standpoint, I just think this is a mistake, because our reserve funds should match our actual, what we've said we need for future obligations, and now it won't match. And so you know, because they're saying, okay, well, now you can use some other funds instead of, as you say, the priority was reserve.
Please.
The
And we didn't
priorities-
do that, and instead of moving reserve funds into other funds and making everything whole, we're doing this. So I think it'd be worth at least a letter saying, can't we do what an accountant would do?
We have others who want to speak.
So, Board Member Little?
Yes, thank you. Just a follow-up question, and I apologize for my ignorance. So when we talk about other funds, are we talking about other revenue sources, or are we talking about other discrete accounting fund entities?
Those would be the former, I believe. Is that correct? See, I'm sorry. This
So
is Susan
we're talking
Schaefer.
about other funding sources.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I read this is we were projecting to spend the ending fund balance, the reserve balance, and instead we're going to be spending some other revenues that are coming in to meet these obligations. So in a sense, the fund balance remains whole, and we're actually identifying other sources of revenue and funds to cover the expenditures that we've identified.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And I hesitate, because we have been at odds and sued the Department of Finance and won. I'd like to leave it the way it is and follow their direction here for this. I don't see the purpose. I don't see any advantage. And I can see potentially real disadvantage if we tell them we're not going to do it.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve it.
I second
Oh my
it.
God. I got.
Is there any further discussion?
Oh my God. I got.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Gooding, a second by Member Brown.
Mama, can I go?
And will the clerk please call a roll?
Mama, excuse me, can I?
Board Member Gooding,
Yes?
Board Member Harper,
No.
Board Member Little,
Aye.
Board Member Brown,
Mama, can I go? Mama?
Chair Martinez.
Aye.
Mama,
The motion passes with Board Member Parente absent and Board Member Harper voting no.
Okay, that brings us to item 6.2. This is a resolution of the
Mama,
Emeryville Oversight Board appointing Susan
Mama,
Chui-Moon-She, Finance Director and Treasurer of the City of Emeryville, its designated official to communicate with the California Department of Finance on behalf of the Oversight Board pursuant to California Health and Safety Code Section 34179H.
I'll take this since I'm here. This would normally be on your consent calendar. This is an administrative item. The city has recently hired Susan Shea as our finance director. So in that new role, we have to adopt this resolution designating her as the official to the city official who would communicate to the DOF on behalf of the board.
Move approval.
Excuse me, second.
I have, can we use our attorney that we've allocated $20,000 to do that? Be that person?
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
do we have the ability to have our attorney be the person that's in contact? Instead of the same person that's representing the successor agency? It seems that there's just a conflict of interest.
So the way that the resolution previously has stated is that whatever the finance director or the city staff that has to work with Department of Finance is obligated to copy our law firm on any and all correspondence. That's what the prior resolution was. We certainly could, although be designated, although a lot of the communication between the city and the DOF are the actual numbers that the finance department, I mean, all we would be doing is getting the information from the finance department, reviewing it, and then being the conduit. But if there were really actually disputes about the numbers and understanding everything, I mean, to some extent, we're going to need to work with the finance director, but we're certainly willing to do it. Like I said, the current resolution and the requirement is that we be copied on all correspondence.
Well, we don't have the funds to pay her, but we have the funds to pay you. I mean, we got the 20,000, but we don't have the 250 administrative fee
Right,
now.
but this falls back on the city's obligation to manage and wind down the successor
So
agency.
they just take on our part too, and even though they don't have administrative.
And I'm not advocating that, but in reality, they're doing that with other staff time, is that they're absorbing that in their budget, and I'm happy to let Mr. Guima
Yep.
speak to that.
That's absolutely right. In effect, the city is absorbing the cost of Susan, or the treasurer, acting as the official.
Yeah. Well, I just, bring up, there's an inborn conflict of interest, and it's only you that can have a sense of that and when it has to be brought to bear. So if you feel that in this situation you have all you need to be able to sense that, that's fine.
We certainly are willing to work with the city to be sure that we are being copied on all communication and correspondence, and I'm not sure in all the transition that has been happening. We're happy to, depending on the direction of the board, take either role. In the event that we receive correspondence that we think is relevant, we don't have to wait for a meeting, and especially since there's going to be so few meetings going forward, then we'll certainly think that the board might want to take some action or direction. It's not on the agenda tonight, but certainly as give direction without taking action as far as what your preference would be about receiving communication between meetings if regarding the city communication with the DOF. So we could forward that on a regular basis.
'Cause you're all the taxing entities have.
Mama.
That's
Between
it.
us
You're
and
it.
Mama.
And there's a whole lot of people that have the other interest inside. So anytime that, I sense that, we need to have our interests put out there, because, I have a lot more buses and drivers that I could pay to get on the road if I had the opportunity.
And we're certainly willing to take whatever role the board decides is appropriate.
So we could have a little bit of discussion on the board members' willingness to get communications in between meetings.
Mama. Mama.
It's fine with me.
Mama. Mama.
So it's, yeah.
Excuse me.
Since we will be meeting, as we discussed, a little more infrequently than we have been, I think that's fine to
Mama.
up that communication. So do we have a motion? Yes. We have a motion. Is there a second? Okay, motion and second. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Board Member Gooding?
Yes.
Board Member Harper?
Yes?
Board Member Little?
Yes.
Vice Chair Brown? Chair Martinez?
Aye.
The motion passes with Mr. Parenti absent.
Thank you. And that takes us to adjournment. At our next meeting, Michael, is this correct? Will be on September 27th?
Yes, that's pursuant to the calendar of meetings that you had adopted. So that's your next regular meeting. As has been the practice, if there has been no agenda items to schedule, then we will cancel the meeting and advise you well in advance of that.
Okay.
But we are required to advertise the next regular meeting pursuant to the schedule that you had adopted.
Okay, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Mama.
Thank you.
Mama.
Yes.
I wrote, if